Hi friends, welcome to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Katelyn and I like to film eyeshadow palette, ranking, and review videos, as well as the occasional other content sprinkled in. So if you like indie makeup, if you like eyeshadow palettes, if you like me, I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button because I post videos whenever I feel like it. And for those of you that are not new here, my face is happy that you are seeing it again. Today we are ranking all of the eyeshadow palettes that I used in the month of August. That's right, every single eyeshadow palette I used, whether it's new, old, slightly new, slightly old, whatever. We're ranking them all. So let's go ahead and get on into it. Just a quick rundown of how I do my rankings, just in case you are new here. I like to do my rankings in categories. So typically I have 4 categories. I have a first category, which is meh, palettes that if they broke or left my collection or got lost, wouldn't care. I'd be like, nah, you win some, you lose some. So that is the meh category. The like category are palettes that I do really like, and I think they are definitely appropriate for maybe, like, they could be somebody else's perfect palette. They're just not necessarily perfect for me. So usually there's something that I'll kind of pick to say, like, here's why this isn't like a love or a holy grail. That to say, the third category, second to last category, is palettes that I love. I love them, highly recommend them. I think they're amazing. Yes. Last category is a holy grail palette, a palette that if anything happened to it, I would need to replace it immediately. I don't know that I could live without this type of a palette or this kind of palette in my life. So those are the 4 categories. I don't have any palettes in the meh category today. So that's exciting. There's nothing that I'm like, meh. You can go. So all of the makeup that I used in the month of August, I liked, at the very least. So first up, let's talk about the like palettes. I also just want to say that even though I'm doing the categories, this ranking is still in order. So I still go from least liked palette to most liked palette. There you go. I still do that. I just don't count down because I lose count. And I don't want to have to put the number on the screen. I had a recent video, I don't know which one of these is going up first, but I filmed a video where I talked about, like, I don't have time to edit. I got a lot going on. So anyways, this is the lazy girl version of ranking. First up, we have what is probably going to surprise a lot of people. I think this might be a controversial pick. A hot take, if you will. The Unearthly Cosmetics High Temp Palette. If you don't know me, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Katelyn, and I don't like red eyeshadow. Yeah, that's pretty much what it boils down to. This palette is like a half warm palette, half purple palette, and I just haven't found a vibe with this color story. Maybe I need to play with it more. I don't know. It has 2 reds, and it's just not my favorite. I've done a couple looks with it, and I'm like, they're all right. So I might like this more as I play around with it more, but I just really, the color story is not for me. Now, this is in the light category. Remember, we don't have any mess. This is in the light category. I think that Unearthly has an amazing formula. I think if you like warm eyeshadow, you will love that palette. It is very nice. Mattes, shimmers, the whole thing. It's just a color story preference for me. That's why it's last. Next up, we have the Gourmandises palette from Gourmand Girls. I was gifted this in PR. Now, I lost a shade, the silver here. And it didn't break. I intentionally broke it because I really felt like the silver was perfect in one of my Frankenstein palettes that I did. And I didn't have a silver anywhere else. So I was like, well, this has got to go. So I took the silver out, but I do have the rest of the palette intact. Anyways, this is a pastel palette, which pastels aren't my favorite either. I like to combine them with other shades. I think you have some deeper shades, but even like this darker purple raisin didn't work that well for me. I really liked Truffles and Muir, but yeah, that was kind of it as far as the darker tones go. I think the shimmers in this palette are really pretty. That's why I needed that silver in another palette. That silver is gorgeous. And then I liked the other shimmers in the palette as well. So I do think this palette is really pretty. It's just mostly a pastel palette, which is personally not my favorite. Next up, we have the Viseart Petite Mattes Cool Original palette. This palette I was also gifted in PR. It is an all matte palette, but it has kind of your core neutral shades. And I have been loving pairing this with either my shimmers from my Adept palettes, or I have some loose pigments. Like, it's just a really nice base based on like how the tones are in this. So I think it's really gorgeous. Now, it is all matte. I tend to like a shimmer on the lid, so it's not quite a perfect palette for me, but I do really like it. I guess I could have put this one in the love because I think Viseart has a great matte formula. I just don't know that this is Holy Grail. I don't know. I have such a hard time ranking the Viseart palettes because I'm like, this formula is like 12 out of 10, but it's all matte, so I would pull something else in. But then some, like usually like an all shimmer palette, I'd rank higher. I don't know. Anyways, I have to think about that. Next up, we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Night Terror palette. I like this palette. I feel like it's a lot more monochromatic than it kind of looks. Like, I think all of my looks have ended up kind of looking the exact same. And I have used different shades. I've tried to be very intentional about doing different looks, and they still kind of lean the same. They're purple. But I do think this is really pretty, and I really like which shade is it? I really like Night Terror and Moonlight. I feel like they are perfect companions to some of the other Unearthly palettes I have, so really like having it. Next up, we have the Disney Sigma The Little Mermaid palette. I ordered this early on JCPenney's website because it was on there early. I've only used it one time, so I've only used the neutral shades over here. They worked great. Really pretty neutrals, but I haven't like fully played, and like this purple shade is calling to me for like a smoky look. Oh, it looks stunning. I love The Little Mermaid. It is probably my favorite Disney movie. The original, like the first one, not, I know they made a sequel. Did they make a third? Anyways, doesn't matter. I thought this palette was so pretty. I decluttered the Cinderella one a long time ago because I didn't really love it. I never bought the Alice in Wonderland. So like the Disney, that Beauty and the Beast one though, I've been tempted. If you have that, let me know if you like it because I'm debating it. Anyways, if I end up loving this, because I didn't love the cool neutrals palette I picked up from them, if I end up loving this, I might have to get the Beauty and the Beast one or ask for it for Christmas or something. Anyways, last palette in the like category is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics and Taj collab, or Donnie Darkowitz is her name on Instagram, the Little Miss She Never Misses palette. And this is what the inside of the palette looks like. Very pretty. Okay, let me back. I just want to say one thing that I think is super important, especially when you're ranking or reviewing collabs, is understanding where the collaborator was coming from. So Tosh said on Instagram that the intent of this was to make shades that looked beautiful on darker skin tones. And I obviously am not a darker skin toned person. I am on the opposite end of the spectrum, about as light as you can be. So I feel like, but okay, let me say, I do feel like I can still use the mattes in this palette because these lighter shades still, while being very pigmented, still blend out super nice. And so I can still use them as a transition. My issue is that some of these shades end up looking very similar on my eye to each other. So like, for example, Panic and What's Up Sucka, like those two look super similar. Moomy and Powerline also look really similar on my eye. So I feel like I'm losing some variety. Then the red, I don't love red eyeshadow. We've already talked about this. And then a lot of these multichromes in here are black-based multichromes, which I have very oily eyelids. Black-based multichromes are the fastest multichromes to crease on me. So I think all the shimmer shades are beautiful. I think if you have a darker skin tone, you will probably see more nuance in the mattes than I do, because your skin tone is who is the intended canvas for this palette. And I think the quality is great. Blend Bunny always has great quality. It's just, if your eyelids crease like mine, the darker base multichromes, they're not going to work for you. But if your eyelids don't crease as bad as mine do, you could be fine. So that is that. Let's move on to the love category. And typically I mention my new palettes, but I've honestly been forgetting. So let's talk about, okay, so Gourmandises was new for the month of August. Like I said, it was gifted in PR. And then Little Miss She Never Misses was also new for the month of August. I did purchase that one myself. And then the Little Mermaid palette was new for the month of August, and I purchased that one myself. The Little Mermaid palette, the only reason it's in a like not love is because I've only used it one time. I just want to clarify that. I don't know if that was clear. Anyways, I have no issues, nothing with it. I just literally have only used it one time, and it felt weird to put it any higher, especially when I only use the neutral shades. Next category, the loves. We have the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. Not a new palette. It's actually a very old palette. It's what made me think, oh, I haven't talked about which ones are new. So here is the palette. I love this color story. I noticed that I essentially have a, what word am I looking for? A tradition. That is my own tradition where I use this palette for the first game day for Arizona State football every year. I'm actually going to an Arizona State football game after this. But anyways, this is the palette that I reach for the first game of the season every year. It's my go-to Arizona State football color story. Like, it's perfect. If you're not familiar, our colors are essentially maroon and gold. So it's like those two shades right there. And I don't know if you can tell, but those are the shades that have probably the deepest dip in the palette. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but anyways, I really like this. The shimmers in this are still nice. They're not my favorite, so I'll be honest, if I'm reaching for this palette, I do tend to pull in shimmers from other palettes or use my loose pigments or flakies or whatever, but I cannot find it in my heart to declutter this palette because it feels like I have to use it for the first game of the season every year. Will I be doing that in 20 years? I don't know, probably not. I think that would be really bad for my eyes at that point, but yeah. Next up, we have the Too Faced Appley In Love palette, and mine this is what kills me about the tins is like when they misalign at some point, like it doesn't close the right way, but whatever. Anyways, here's the inside of the palette. Smells amazing, looks great. I really like this palette. I think this is really pretty. Are these shimmers indie quality shimmers? No, they're not. They're not. So if you only like indie shimmers, you're probably going to think these shimmers are lackluster. But I really like the mattes. I like the matte color story. I've liked every look I've done with it. This has been a palette I've been reaching for a lot, especially when I go into the office for work, because under those fluorescent lights, I feel like I need to be a little more low-key than I am at home through Teams. So that's where we're at. Next up, we have the Archeo palette from Clionadh Cosmetics. Here is the inside of this palette. I think this palette is really pretty. This shade Terrain, I know it's like a green with like a peachy shimmer, but I honestly thought it was like a peachy shimmer with like a green. Anyways, long story short, I used it and it was way more green than I was expecting, like in the shade, in the look that I did. Anyways, I don't know why I'm mentioning that. I was just kind of expecting something different. I like this palette. I think it's really pretty. I think the shimmers are some of the most beautiful shimmers I've ever used in my life. The mattes are good. Of the palette, the three Clionadh palettes, I feel like the mattes in here actually work the best. They just blend into each other the nicest. But I still prefer other mattes. So I do love this, but it's not exactly a holy grail favorite. Next up, we have the Adept Cosmetics Legend of Ardra palette. I think this palette is beautiful. I think I mentioned this before, but you essentially can only do like a pink crease. Like it's either like a pinky purple crease or a pinky neutral crease. There's not a ton of variety in here as far as the mattes go. And then I feel like you have like half neutrals, half like pink, green, gold shifting shades. Like it's not one-dimensional. It's like two-dimensional, three-dimensional maybe. So there's just not a ton of versatility in it. So I don't think it could be a holy grail. But man, is Ventax. I don't usually swatch in these videos, but let's just talk about Ventax for a second. Does that not look like the most gorgeous? I don't even know if it's capturing the shine. Like it just looks like wet and sparkly and glittery. It's kind of like the glitter puck from, okay. It's kind of like the glitter puck from, why did I just write that on there? I'm struggling. It's kind of like the glitter puck from Half Magic Beauty, but like in eyeshadow form with like more of a base to it. It is gorgeous. Oh my gosh, I love it. Anyways, I think that shade is beautiful. There are a couple of shades in here, Ardra and Ventaxian Scholar, that crease a little bit on me, but honestly, I've had worse creasing from Adept, so I'm not mad about those two, but they're definitely more of a, I think on their site, they describe them as a gel, because they say they have a gel and a cream consistency in here. I don't know if those are the gel or the cream, but anyways, they move. So they definitely are just more emollient. So they crease more. I did have significant staining with the pinks and purple shades on here, but Adept site does warn you about that. So there you go. Next up, we have the Too Faced Cinnamon Swirl palette. I used the Appley in Love and was like, let's whip out all the old Too Faced palettes, you know? That being said, I didn't actually have this one, so I bought it on Mercari. So this was my first time using it, and it is beautiful. Why doesn't Too Faced use this shimmer formula? Like the shade Frost Those Buns and Sticky Buns, I use these two shimmers up here. They are so smooth, but so metallic. I'm like, what? Like now they do more of this like textured metallic, which is fine. I don't hate it. But I like this a lot better. So I want them to use that again. But anyways, that was that. Next, we have the Clionadh Cosmetics Paleo palette. This palette has a less variety or versatility than the Archeo palette. Like you're either doing a neutral look, a blue look, or a blue and neutral look. Like those are your choices. But it's just such a classic, you know? Neutral with a pop of blue, classic. Blue look, classic. Neutral look, classic. Like I just feel like I can see myself reaching for this one more than anything else because I absolutely love it. So there you go. Next up is another new palette for the month of August. This is the Nomad Cosmetics Fuji 5 Lakes palette. I've used this palette, I honestly think I just used it once. I thought I used it more. Did I use it twice? It doesn't look like it's been used twice. I don't know. Anyways, I did a very quick, easy neutral look with it. This ranking this one, I've only used it once, similar to the Sigma palette, but I've seen looks with this palette that I'm like, that I have to recreate, so I think it's getting kind of some of that benefit. But also, this packaging is seriously stunning. It's like this raised, like, painting on this canvas. Oh my gosh, I love that Nomad does different packaging. This shade, Pompous Grass, so beautiful. So wet, metallic looking. I love it. I love it so much. But yeah, I think I only did one look so far. So anyways, I have to play with this more. But I do really like this palette. In fact, I love it. It's in the love category. Probably shouldn't have ranked it so high, but it is getting some benefit from some of the looks I've seen other people do with it. Next up, we have the I Need a Warm palette from Natasha Denona. I know, she's boring. She's basic. How is she any different from the Golden palette? She has better shimmers, okay? That's how she's different from the Golden palette. And the mattes are richer. They go deeper. She puts the Golden palette to shame. I don't even know why they released the Golden palette when they knew they were coming down the pipeline with this. This palette is perfect. The shimmers in here are so gorgeous. If I want a neutral look, like this is going to be my go-to for a while. It is so freaking pretty. I love it. Next up, we have the Oceano palette from Clionadh Cosmetics. If you watch my video, you'll remember that actually this palette, I was like, I don't really know what looks you can do with this. So this is my least favorite out of the three. I was so wrong. You just have to think outside of the box. And any look, like any combination of these colors just looks so good together. Like when you look at it, you're like, okay, cool. What am I supposed to do here? It all works. I'm just telling you right now, it all works together. Whatever combination you do, it works. So that is it for the love palettes. Now let's go to my Holy Grail favorites. I think I forgot to mention that I Need a Warm was also new for the month of August. Anyways, I have one Holy Grail favorite to talk to you about for the month of August, and that is the Gourmand Girls Peach Perfect palette. I love, adore everything. This palette is so good. You can do a peach look. You can do a green look. You can do like a sage green look or a minty green look. You can do a combination of the two. You can do something that looks more neutral. You can do all matte looks. You can do looks with shimmer. Like it, I feel like the possibilities with this one are endless. Like this palette just speaks to me. And I think I've talked about this before, but if you give me a pink, green, brown color story, like sold, done, boom. That's it. Like this palette in Groovy Garden, I'm like, if I could only have a couple of eyeshadow palettes. Now, does that take away variety in how I could do my makeup? Yeah, I'd just be having pink, green, or neutral looks, but I love it. I love it. That's the color story that I just love so, so much. There's something about it. I don't know. Anyways, those are all the palettes that I used in the month of August. I feel like the newer palettes ranked pretty good. I usually like to mention which palettes are newer just because I like to think through, like, should I have bought this? Should I have not? So Fuji 5 Lakes and I Need a Warm, definitely love them. Knocked it out of the park. Gourmandises I did receive in PR. Honestly, I probably would not have purchased that one myself solely because it is a more pastel color story and that's just like not my jam. But then I wouldn't have had that silver, and that is a very, very good silver. So I don't know. Maybe I would have. I don't know. Especially because that's the first palette that I saw them come out with after the Peach Perfect one. And as we just discussed, that's my, maybe I would have picked it up. I don't know. Anyways, moving along. So Fuji 5 Lakes, I Need a Warm, absolutely knocked out of the park. Stunning. Little Mermaid, I have to play with more. So jury's out. I've only used it one time. So have I with Fuji 5 Lakes, but I don't know. There's something about that palette that speaks to me. I think maybe it's just the packaging and what I've seen other people do with it. Little Miss She Never Misses. Even knowing what I know now, I still would have picked this palette up solely because I love Taj, aka Donnie Darkowitz. I love her account. I think she is so creative. I was so excited to see her get this opportunity. So I would have picked it up either way. Even knowing what I know now, I still would pick it up. It's just, like I said, it's not that it's not meant for my skin tone, but it's not designed with my skin tone in mind. It's designed with a deeper skin tone in mind. I'm sure it is perfect, beautiful, all the things on a darker, deeper skin tone. So I think if you have that darker, deeper skin tone, I would say definitely give it a try. If you're lighter like me, you know, it's up to you. If you like a darker look, or are okay with some shades maybe pulling a little bit similar on your skin tone. I also feel like undertone factors into that. So you could have a lighter skin tone similar to me, but have a different undertone, and maybe those shades would show up different. Anyways, I do really like the pastel shades in that palette though. I'm not gonna lie. They're so pigmented, but still so beautiful and blendable. So anyways, let's talk about which palettes I used the most. I'm looking over at my iPad over here because this is where I keep all my notes. The palette I used the most for the month of August was the Legend of Ardra palette at 3 times. I used Gourmandises, Aptly in Love, and Archeo twice in the month of August. So there you go. I've used them in other months too. Well, Gourmandises is new. Aptly in Love and Archeo I used in July also, I believe. And then Gourmandises I've used in September. So anyways, oh my gosh, that was a lot. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.